Councilor Bickford?
Here.
Councilor Ward?
Here.
Councilor Pesky?
Here.
Councilor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councilor Mason?
Here.
Councilor Lunt?
Here. First item, please.
Is under public hearing, GA Housing Maximums, Appendix C.
I'd like to open a public hearing. This is actually something the town didn't bring forward. This is something that's required by the state. We really have no control over it, but it's just more of a procedure for us. If there's anybody interested in speaking on that public hearing, come forward. Seeing no activity on that, we'll actually close our public hearing. Next item, please.
Is another public hearing for home occupation ordinance.
I'd like to open a public hearing for the home occupation. This is an item that we've talked about in a couple of meetings before, and it basically is what the town and the planning boards are working on to actually clarify some of the home occupation and put some more clarity to that and actually have it a little bit more workable for some of the townspeople. I'd like to open that public hearing.
Vern, why do you always look at me first?
It's natural.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. When someone's looking for a community to settle down in for him and his family, they look for a community that meets their needs because buying a home is a substantial investment. Lisbon has always been a bedroom community because it had an excellent reputation as a rural environment. Now, management elected not to support the code enforcement officer and changed the current ordinance to accommodate a few individuals. This action not only changes the environment of Lisbon, but lowers the value of the town. All residents who own their own home should be filing abatement for the de-evaluation for devaluating their property with this new home occupation ordinance. Has this new amendment or new ordinance been approved or been submitted to AvCog for review? And what was their reading on it?
You can keep speaking. It's not a question and answer at this point in time. This is like your opportunity to speak if you like.
We're not going to get an answer to that question?
This is just your opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Roger Cody, Lisbon Falls. I have a few concerns and a few statements that I'd like to make about this particular issue. Number one, we have 2 violations on Route 9 currently. One of them has been there for 3 years. The other one has been there recorded for over a year. Why have these not been dealt with? Is a question that I would like to have an answer to. The rest of the town is under the same zoning that those 2 people are, that have got violations against them. And this council, this town manager, code enforcement, not the present, but the one prior to, refused to do anything about it. Why is that? And is that going to be the same for everybody in the community? Or are we going to discriminate against everybody else and go after them and not these 2? It's a question that I have. And moving forward, how are you ever going to make an ordinance stick after going 3 years not upholding the law with this one? If you come to my house next year, I want to build a garage, and I want to build it 2 feet from the line. And a code enforcement says, no, you can't do that. You need a 15-foot setback, a 25-foot setback. I say, tough, you don't like it? Take it up with the council. They let the other 2 people get by. Why should I have to be held accountable? Do you think the courts would look at that favorably? That's discrimination. And that's the whole town. We're not talking just Route 9. We're talking the whole town of Lisbon and your whole zoning ordinance. It's the same. You're not going to be able to make another zoning stick in the whole town if you do this. Because everybody is going to have the same loophole. And discrimination brings big payouts, people. I think you ought to really think about this. I talked to this with ABCOG. I talked to Mr. Maloney about this. And he went, how in God's will are they ever going to have an ordinance stick in that town again? Not to mention, each and every single counselor, town manager, code enforcement officer, planning board, all took an oath of office to, number one, hold up the Constitution of the United States, hold up the Constitution of the state of Maine, local laws, and ordinances. And every one of you are guilty. Every single one of you are guilty. You've already had the first reading, and I watched it on TV. You all voted. Yes, I'm going to break my oath right now. Watch me. To the whole community in the state.
That is strictly your opinion, Roger.
It's not the opinion of my state, it's the opinion of ABCOG. I talked to Mr. Maloney just the other night. He told me the same thing. And I've talked to 2 lawyers because I intend to push this, Larry and I, in the court system. This is so easy. Number 2, besides that, moving forward, how can you people change an ordinance of this nature without clearing up an ordinance, without clearing up a violation? If I was going down the road and I want to do 100 miles an hour, they stop me. You can't do that. Well, I would think I really should. I think it'd be okay. Okay, Mr. Cody, you can do it. The next guy comes, how are you going to force him to make him go 45 when you've let that guy do 100? You're doing the same thing. I have a violation, 1990, where I was stopped running a business. Shut down. I'm going to take you to court if you don't stop your business. And what do? You shut me down and turn it around 10 years later and let 2 people do it, or in fact more than 2, but 2 that are in violation continue to do it. Discrimination again. I'm just wondering, how long do you think this discrimination is going to go on? In the town of Lisbon, we have zoning to protect our property, to make sure that if we put our money in and invest in our property, in our homes, we have zoning. Somebody can't build a used car lot across the street, or a refuge yard across the street, or somebody can't come and put something that's not necessarily approved. That's why we have zoning. We know this when we purchase our properties. So we build a home, we pay mortgages our whole life, and then some council decides they're going to change the ordinance and allow something to go on next door that was never permitted when I bought my property. Are we all going to be able to get abatements for this? These are questions that have to be answered, guys. And if they don't want to answer us and you want to just shut us off, the court system will answer it for me. Thank you.
Anybody else for the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing. Next item, please.
Is another public hearing for the Finance Committee ordinance amendment.
I'd like to open the public hearing for the Finance Committee ordinance amendment. This is the public hearing for the finance group that was voted into place, and this will be the final, this will be the public hearing and final reading on this.
This for the creation of the Finance Committee? Is that what it is, or?
The Finance Committee is actually was voted in. This is the public hearing part for the Finance Committee.
It's an amendment to the Finance Committee ordinance.
We've actually already...
What did they amend on it for? And I've been out of circulation, I've been working for a living, so I haven't
Basically,
had
what
a chance.
the amendment of the The Finance Committee was originally appointed for 5 regular members. We're actually changing amending it to actually allow for 2 alternates, to allow more participation in the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else for that public hearing? Seeing none, we'll shut that public hearing down. Next item, please.
Is another public hearing for the pawnbroker establishment license for Daniel Miller Jr., doing business as Double Diamond Pond.
I'd like to open that public hearing. Anybody have any interests? Seeing none, we'll shut that public hearing. Next item, please.
Is under audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward.
When we, this is Roger Cody of Lisbon Falls again. When you people did away with the advisory board, there was people on the advisory board that were voted members. Like Ms. Fitzgerald got like 3,700 votes. Doesn't anybody feel that she should have had an opportunity to be on the board without any question after having 3,700 votes from the people of this community? I mean, I can understand slapping somebody in the face, but you don't have to knock them out. I mean, come on. 3,700 votes, that's more votes than any one of you councilors ever got. To be on an advisory board and then completely ignore her? Good luck, folks.
Anybody else?
Dorothy Fitzgerald, resident of Lisbon Falls. I was going to shut my mouth and not say anything on the home occupation ordinance, but we all know that even though it's the wrong thing to do, it's a done deal. So I'm wondering, surely the town must be aware that there are many home occupations, small businesses that have been operating for many years without a permit, have not been paying personal property taxes. Now that you will be having a home occupation code in effect, will the town, the code enforcement, and the town assessor be looking into this matter, having these people fill out the necessary permits, and be assessed personal property taxes? Town's been trying to come after me for personal property tax on items that I bought, equipment that I bought. 1984, when I started a real estate office, paid personal property taxes on it from 84 to, I think it was 1994. And I decided that enough is enough. And when these people are assessed and pay personal property tax, I will pay my personal property tax minus interest. Thank you.
Anybody else for the audience participation? Seeing none, we'll close that. Next item, please.
Next item is the audience participation response.
If you'd like.
In answer to your question about did we consult AvCog, no, we did not. We have a contract planner on board here, no different than John Maloney, and we've already paid for that, so we would not consult another planner. That's the answer to that question. And why, I'll answer some of the questions about the home occupation ordinance and why some of the things weren't addressed. You have many places, from what I understand, throughout the town of Lisbon who have businesses operating in areas where they are not supposed to. Now, we didn't have the resources, and the ordinance needed to be addressed, like many other ordinance, Roger, that you participated in, that sometimes don't necessarily work, and things change over time. So that's why you amend ordinances to comply with situations that you find out in the community that don't necessarily fit, and you try to work with the businesses that you have so they can stay. And that's what we are trying to do. Okay?
The only other response back was the idea as far as for the Finance Committee. The procedure as far as that was put in place when that was voted in was the idea of everybody to, that had an interest in it to send in an application. And there was a complete procedure put forward, and anybody that actually fulfilled those requirements actually had a fair shake from a group to actually look at those, anybody that wanted to apply for that committee. So it was a very fair process. I don't think we slapped and knocked down anybody that had an interest, in participating. Next item, Twyla?
Yes, this is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered next. Seeing none, Order 2013-24 to approve the minutes of January 8, January 22, and the renewal pawnbroker license for Daniel Miller Jr., doing business as Double Diamond Pawn.
I so move.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item, please.
Under Council Orders, Resolutions, and Ordinances, Order 2013-25, Home Occupation Ordinance, second reading, roll call vote required.
Actually, entertain a motion so we can have discussion.
I'll make that motion. Second.
All right. Any discussion for council?
I guess I'll start.
We were waiting.
I'm not sure how the other counselors feel, but reviewing it, the ordinance on page 2, section 2, letter G, where it reads that operations will have 3 years to be in compliance with the ordinance. I personally feel it's a little too long. 3 years is a long time away, and I'm just not convinced that that is in the best interests of the community or the businesses that are here. I think we need to bite the bullet and take action sooner than later.
Are you recommending a change possibly to a 2-year period versus a 3-year?
I personally like to see 6 months to a year.
You do understand, unfortunately, the process that this actually goes through could take 6 months or more just for the process to go through. So, I mean, it could be a situation where a business would be very difficult to actually meet it even a year with the process going through. And and that's a valid point, though. Does any other councilors have any concerns or any recommendations?
I felt like 3 years was a little excessive. Not that I don't want somebody to be in business, but that I'd like to see them comply with everybody else. And I guess I don't understand the reason 3 years was chosen, and maybe if I understood that better, I would have a clearer idea.
That's where we're coming next. Don?
Let me say two things. One, when we started with writing this ordinance, it had been because of last year's efforts along Route 9, where AvCog was consulted at that point and advised us that if we were going to pursue the angle that we were pursuing at that time, that we would need to change the comprehensive plan and go through the process for that. That would have required, if you remember, that was changing the strip and having essentially an overlay along Route 9. AvCog was consulted then, and AvCog was consulted this year. In fact, our model ordinances that we took this from came from information supplied by AvCog. The Turner ordinance and several other towns were used and put together to come up with this ordinance. As far as specifically addressing the 3 years, that was, I'm learning the rest of the story after I spoke with some people. The 5 years was one of the suggestions. 1 year or less was one of the other suggestions, and 3 years was probably one of those compromises that nobody wanted. But that's what it was. It was a compromise in 3 years. I personally don't have any real strong opinion as to what 3 years means. I think that anything less than a year is unrealistic, however.
Don, what do we have to go through as a town that Fern was referencing before this is going into effect? Are you aware of that?
I know that when it's in effect, I don't know how many days it is. I can't remember how many?
21.
21 days after it becomes effective. The feeling, I know that there were some people on the board that felt that if there are violations out there, and we know there are people doing things that we don't have accurate records on, I'll say, if you ask them to stop that operation immediately, you're putting a business out. And we know that. We also know that that potential is in other parts of the town as well. There's only a couple of them that are going to would have been affected by that 3-year rule, and those are the ones dealing in automobile repair and RV repair and that sort of thing. There is no grandfathering any other time limits on anybody else. So
The process, I think, here is actually, if someone was to, once this ordinance goes in effect, basically the business would have to come in and actually apply, go through the permitting process. And I
it's
think,
one of those businesses that needs a permit, yes.
correct, in that permitting process, by the time they actually were to come in and apply, the idea of going through the planning board, the process, the potential 2 or 3 particular meetings. So, I mean, we are talking not a month, but this could be a 3 to 4 month gearing up to the point that the person, because part of this is actually hearing from the neighbors and the paperwork as far as for sending out registered letters. I mean, there's quite a process involved, so that's where I was getting with the time frame. It could be from the time someone can apply to the point of them actually getting going, several months into that process before they find out the details of what they need to do to comply. So that's why I think he's mentioning the year is kind of a narrow opportunity, because it isn't necessarily saying that from the day that everything's on paper that you get a year. It may take 6 months to get to that point, then you would only have a few months to actually comply. So I think that's why Don was mentioning that less than a year may be kind of a stretch for not just the person that owns the property, but for the planning board and for everybody in place to act on it.
So basically, on average, take about 3 months to get through the planning board in the town, 3 to 4 months, right? Is that what you're saying?
Don probably could actually give me a little bit better feel on that. If someone was, the average, if someone was to come in to do that now, Don, even before this, it actually,
Well, typically what happens is if somebody now is coming to us for a conditional use, first they go through codes. Code says, yes, you've filled out all the applications and you've done it right. It then has to be accepted by us in one meeting, and then a hearing scheduled for a different one so we have to have at least 2 meetings, and we either are going to be a whole month or possibly 2 months in that process. So, and then if it's not right and has to be sent back there, and of course that adds to the time.
Fran, can I ask him something?
sure, go right ahead.
Don, we're kind of looking right now at 1 or 2 businesses to do this. But what happens if we do pass the ordinance? You're going to have to, there could be 20. So you've got to have time to do all these. You can't put them all.
There could be 20 businesses that want to do auto repair.
No, well, the business for the,
Those are the ones that have to
Yeah.
come before the planning board.
well, there could be a lot more out there. There is a lot more out there. So if they come forward, you could be kind of swamped.
Well, if there are businesses out there right now, under this proposal, they've got 3 years to get it in line or get out of business.
But if they do the process after we do it,
Well,
and they
they
all
can
came
start-
in, you're going to be kind of
Right.
swamped.
Well, they've got, in this case, they had 3 years to make up their mind what they want to be.
Right.
Or not be, and at the end of that process, have to comply, or have to apply like everyone else. So they, in this case, have 3 years to make up that decision, and could apply anytime they wanted to.
Okay.
okay, I thought I was clear on this, and now I feel like you just said that somebody has 3 years to sit back and do business and pretend they're thinking that they're going to really apply for.
I didn't use the word pretend.
But I mean, that's that could be the flip side of it, not, gee, I wonder if I should get this, or I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can afford it. I can see those things being important to somebody who's in business, but I also see someone sitting back saying, I'm not going to do that, and I got 3 years, so I can still do business until I get kicked out. So, and then maybe I can con somebody else into doing something for me. So I see both sides of that, and I just want to make sure that I really am seeing what I'm seeing, right?
If we were to make a change tonight on this, which I believe would be a minor change of this wouldn't have to go back and to be read on, we could actually make this.
Please don't send it back to the.
No, that's what I'm just actually clarifying, making sure the council's aware that we could actually make a change on this, and actually still, and I guess the next question would be, is reading through the rest of the ordinance, as I'm sure you've been following all along and have a pretty good handle on it. Was there any other questions that while Dawn's up there, we can ask, and then maybe we can show.
Well, let me just say things to clear up the permitting thing. There are 3 tiers here. One of them was where you probably don't even know there's a home occupation, nobody does. And that's one of those where essentially not very many people are involved. The second one is where there is a permit required but given by the codes enforcement officer. In that case, they can employ up to 2 people. Those people making the 2 people who make their property the permanent residence, who do not make it their permanent residence, if they propose to have a business sign, and if they propose to have parking of more than just what it takes to live there, those people would have to have a permit. In addition to that, if they have an auto body shop, auto repair facility, or those for RVs, then they have to go through the planning board process. And that's where we're talking 3 years. That's the only section of the ordinance that has anything to do with 3 years. So,
I think the reason it's, at the forefront of our minds is because that's the bone of contention. I don't think there are very many people who are worried about very many of those other businesses. It's those obvious businesses that are obviously doing things differently from other people in town who are doing business. So I hear what Roger says when he says, there could be, the codes office could be swamped with stuff at the outset. So maybe 3 years would be good so that we have time for that. But on the flip side, people are going to sit back and think about it, like, well, do I still want to stay in business? Do I want to pay taxes that way? Or if I'm really going to stay in business, do I need to do it differently? So I guess I'm thinking out loud, but I wonder if you have any insight on that. 3 years doesn't sound excessive.
well, the only thing I would say is I don't have a problem with 6 months personally. But I think that to put that on codes to go out there and fix it all in 6 months because people aren't going to volunteer to come forward is a little much, and you're just lending yourself to another unenforceable ordinance. So it has, to me, in my opinion, it has to be longer than 6 months, and I think anything, personally, I don't know, a year, 18 months would be what I think is an absolute minimum. 3 years, okay, yeah, you're right. You could probably sit out there for 2.5 of them and then say, well, I better get my act together. So that's what I know about it.
Thank you.
Mike, one question. For somebody who just requires a permit from the code officer, if they decide not to apply for a permit, what happens to them? Assist immediately?
It's like one of those speeders you don't know is speeding. If you don't see him on radar and a cop doesn't see him, I guess he's under the radar.
Okay,
But if he's
addressed and decides, no, I don't want to do a permit, they have to cease and desist
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah,
Then,
that's the intent.
okay. But the auto shops get to keep going for 3 years is what I
The
think.
ones that are already in existence, not any new things. And maybe not 3 years when you finish here.
Dawn, is there anything else in this ordinance that you or your board put in here that isn't standard throughout other communities? Is there one thing in particular that you guys really focused on to add in that wouldn't be like a Turner ordinance or anything else?
I think we just did a lot better job of writing the ordinance than some of the towns did. There was a lot of, we read through different tiers and things, but there were a lot of loopholes and then we attempted to close them, but no, there wasn't any other major area, I don't think. The three-tier process was one that was not an invention on our part. But I'm not sure. I think we did separate it between codes and planning board, though.
Can I put this into realistic terms for just a minute, instead of this kind of business with this square inches of sign? The third kind of business is the auto repair business. The second kind of business is maybe a hair salon, and the person who owns it has two people who work for, and they can have 2 or 3 cars at a time. And the first one is maybe the person who makes something at home that they sell on the internet or something. So is that a clear?
Well, currently, the ordinance says that it attempts to say that there are no signs for home occupations. So that's why one of the Tier 2 things was allowing signs, but only very small signs.
Right.
And a business that it's a business and not treated as a home occupation is a whole different category.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I think people need to be aware, too, that we already do have a home occupation ordinance on the books, so this is not something entirely out of the blue. It's just clarifying, because our existing ordinance is very vague and isn't really clear what's allowed and what isn't.
Yep, very vague.
Yeah, Vegas.
Would someone at this point, would someone actually want to make a possible amendment to this to actually move forward?
I would like to move that we amend Part G on page 3 to 2 years. I just think 3 years is too long. So I would move that we change it to 2 years.
I'll second that.
Don't they have to withdraw their
Yeah,
motion?
procedure-wise, I do believe we have to take,
Can you make this your first reading now with your new amendment? Hold your second public hearing, a second reading later, and consider it done.
do we actually all in one night, would we do that, or
I would consider this your first reading on your change.
would that smaller change actually make us go back to a first reading? I was under the impression that that wouldn't be the case.
I don't think so.
It'd be an insignificant, it actually doesn't change the character of the ordinance, basically changes a timeframe, so.
So then then I think the motion with the amendment was fine.
Okay,
They don't
That's an
have to withdraw their
appropriate
amendment? They don't have to
No.
withdraw their motion?
No, they can make this amendment, we'll vote on it, then we'll do the whole thing
That's how I
Okay.
read it.
with the
all right.
amendment.
So it was actually brought
We-
forward and seconded, and so that needs
So
to
it'd
actually be
be a
done in
roll
roll
call
call.
vote.
Okay,
Can I
Okay.
add to that before we
Count-
vote on it? I'd like to add to it, as far as this goes, once they're discovered, give them 6 months to actually start the application process.
That would take it back to the planning board?
yeah,
That
would actually probably take it that point, yeah. The,
Because that to me doesn't fit, it doesn't seem fair to me that you're giving these guys 3 years just, like you said, just to sit back and say, well, yeah, I might. But yet somebody else who gets tagged for operating a business outside the scope of this has to shut down immediately. So you're basically giving them 3 years to.
Well, the only
This
time they'd have
amendment-
the only time they'd have to shut down immediately if they refuse to get a permit.
Exactly. If they refuse to do the permit, they're done. If these guys refuse to get a permit, they've got 3 years to sit back and say, oh, yeah, maybe. These guys would have to do it immediately or else they're shut down. So it's
Are we
not
allowed to have discussion while there's a
fair.
motion on the floor?
This is the amendment you're discussing now, which is the 2 years versus the 3 years, so.
Okay, good.
I agree that 2 years, but I would add to that they only have a certain amount of time to actually start the application process.
I think that as far as in this particular group here, in this grouping that we're looking at in the G on page 3,
Yep.
any clarification on that, Dawn? Is that basically pretty much how it's stated at this point, right?
What was said there?
Yes, yep.
You're right, there's that.
Sorry, Don, but we're going to pull all the information
Yeah,
we can.
sorry
out of
to,
you.
try to make it more work than it's worth, but.
Okay, let's assume that a business is repairing cars up on Route 9 somewhere, fictitious business, and this business is known, and we were to go through this process with this ordinance as it now exists. That business would have 3 years to either go out of business or become a true home occupation by our definition, or cease and desist. If you change that, obviously, that's going to change. If you have, as you were saying, somebody who identifies as a home occupation that needs a permit,
Hairdressing
that
in
wants to
there.
put a sign up, I guess?
Oh, they're a hairdressing operation that, for some reason, nobody knew about. All of a sudden, it gets reported, hey, they're doing a home business. The code enforcement officer
Well,
goes and looks and
it's
says,
one
"Ah."
thing to say they're a home business, another to say that they want to put a sign up or have outside employees.
Well,
If
I'm
that's
talking
the
about
case-
one that requires a permit.
Okay,
They're reported for having a home business that actually requires a permit, they don't have a permit.
so they need to
The
get
code
one.
enforcement goes over and says, hey, you need a permit. They decide they don't want to do a permit. They're shut down immediately. But yet, these other individuals who are doing the automobile repairs still get to go on for 3 more years without applying for a permit. I just don't think it's fair, to tell somebody, okay, you're out of business, but we let these guys go for 3 years working.
I'm not sure what codes would say
Yeah.
as far as another, okay, you make a point.
Amanda, would you have
about-
clarification on that? Yeah.
I'm trying to think through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, help.
And I think part of that actually goes back to what we already have for the home occupation as far as how those people were permitted before.
Yep.
Because they were automatically, if they were by themselves, without having employees, would have fit within that first category that was already.
Yeah, I'm talking about the second one that requires a permit. So.
I'm trying to figure out, because I feel like that we're getting hung up on the permitting versus being in violation, and they're not. If there's a hairdresser who needs a permit because they have a sign and they didn't know about it, even now, all they have to do is, under this ordinance, is fill out the permit. It's probably not an issue of, I have to fill out the permit. There's no fee or anything we're attaching to this. You just have to have a permit. So it's probably whether or not that hairdresser is actually still a home occupation or not. If they're exceeding if they're not a home occupation by the definition, permitted or not, that's going to be the issue. That's going to be, the hairdresser has too much parking, too much traffic movement, too many signs, whatever. They're actually a business. They have to go through planning board, site plan review. It changes from a home occupation to something else. Or they realize that, we have too many employees, or we have too many signs. Let's just take down a sign and have fewer employees, and then we can be a permitted home occupation and just do this easy permit. So that's more on that side. With regards to the 2-year or 3-year window, from the effective date, there are going to be any number of home occupations that suddenly are in a new category, needing a permit. Specifically with the auto ones, they have, let's say you change it to 2 years. After 2 years, they have to come into compliance with what meets the definition of home occupation, or they get the cease and desist. For some of those things that may be, 1 to 2 years, it may take them that long to really change things to fit that configuration, because it may involve site work, or they may decide, no, I'm going to go through site plan review because I want to do all this. But at least a 2-year window does allow for the planning board not to feel like in the first year we're going to get any of that altogether. That could space out. And yes, there may be some people in violation for a couple of years, but that's already a possibility now. Maybe with a lot of things that are not home occupations, there may already be things that are in violation. So whether or not you give them that courtesy 2 years or not once it's a violation, that doesn't always mean they're gonna stop either. You give them that notice, and they may keep going. So I'm feeling like the 2 years is a reasonable time, if you want to cut that down, if 3 years seems excessive. It's more probably going to be a factor of how can codes and planning board keep up with the permitting and review than whether or not we're keeping people from being, in violation, operating in violation, because that's going to happen sort of regardless of this. But if we give planning board and codes that 2 years to really get everything straightened out, I think that's where we're going to see more of an issue. Does that make sense? Am I?
So after this 2-year period, effective from the date of this ordinance, 2 years from now, it's a moot point, because nobody's grandfathered anymore, and it's a done deal.
Yeah,
And if somebody's operating when they're not supposed to be,
they're done.
The
Violation.
process of code enforcement and issuing of violations, it's all, that officially kicks in. But
it's
the
not
2
whenever
years
somebody
is
gets
to allow
discovered, they
that
have 2 years. Okay.
These types of sites may have more involved in terms of coming into compliance, or may have more involved in terms of planning board review. That takes time on the town's part. So if we have that 2 years, that doesn't make people feel like, oh, there was only a 1-year window and I couldn't get to the planning board and couldn't make this happen, and now I'm getting a violation notice, and is that really fair?
Let me throw something else out here. They can't have a 2-year, 3-year, or whatever window if we don't know about the business. And if the business is unknown 6 months from now, oh well.
3 years, they're.
You don't have 3 years. You're an unknown, you're not, so I think also when this ordinance goes out, it would be a really outstanding thing to do to make it very public and perhaps officially public, so that somebody who comes down the road and gets caught a year from now doesn't have that delay.
That answers some,
That answers my question.
a lot of the home occupation that, as Mark was saying, what's on the books now, a lot of those would already fit within that guideline. So, I mean, a lot of those people really wouldn't be affected too much. It's not, it's more or less just a documentation, so we have a record of it in town that actually is happening. It's not really jumping through hoops at that point. So we actually have a motion, we had it seconded, and this, if there's no more for it,
With the amendment?
I guess my question is, there are 2 known businesses that were in violation. What is those 2 businesses still have 3 years at this time to get in compliance?
With
Past this, it'll be 2 years.
2 years.
I understand that, but according to what this says, I honestly feel that those businesses should become compliant immediately, because they have been in business, they've been doing business, and they knew this was all coming down, and in my opinion, it should be immediate, especially for those 2 businesses, and anybody else that maybe I don't know about. Others that might be caught later, that's one thing, but somebody that knowingly, there was a mix-up with personal property, whatever it is, I think that should be immediate, and I don't care if it means to change things, that's my opinion on that.
I also feel that if we give them 2 years, let's just face it, that 2-year mark is going to be pushed. So if we give them 1 year, that 1-year mark is going to be pushed. So I feel we should bite the bullet, take care of the situation so we don't hear about it for 2 more years. Let's kill it.
So what's your thought of that? To do that, you would do what? Would you actually bring it to a year?
I would do a year. I like what Gina's talking about, but can that happen? Is that legal? I don't know. But I would support a 1-year grace period for these businesses.
Kill the businesses, they couldn't get in compliance.
What's that?
That would kill the businesses, they couldn't get in
Yeah.
compliance.
I mean, I think as they both spoke, I mean, a year would actually be tough, only because of the restraints on the planning board itself to actually go through the process.
But those 2 businesses that are in question have known that they've been operating illegally, and I don't mean to put it that way, but that's what's happening, it's over a year now since it all came about. So to me, you should have been prepared for it. And I'm not about closing anybody down, but I'm also about people getting what they need to get, and code enforcement being part of that, and being sure people get what they need. So
I
I just think that, I don't know, 3 years is way too much, and I think 2 years is a little bit better, but I personally think with the very most a year.
And I also feel that if businesses that are in the community felt that we're going to shut them down and that 3 years, whatever, was too quick, I would think they would be here voicing their opinion. And I don't see anybody here that is really concerned about it. So, I mean, they can't be too worried. They can't be losing sleep. I don't know.
So your thoughts to move this forward would be the idea, Gina, to retract the last motion and actually change it to a year? Is that your thought?
For businesses that are known to be in violation, yes, to do the year minimum, maximum for those businesses. That's my opinion. Because they've known well over a year to begin with, so that, to me, means you should have prepared for it.
But part of the preparation that we're talking about now is
Can I offer a
it's on the
suggestion?
town side more so than theirs.
Yeah.
May I offer a suggestion?
You may.
Just delete that whole 3-year portion out of there, and you've accomplished what I hear that you want to do. That whole line out of the ordinance that says 3 years for existing businesses, for those in the business of auto repair and like that, take it totally out, and you've got the ordinance without any of that problem. But just bear in mind, when they had to, and I'm not advocating for anybody, except that we went through a lot of effort having a public forum over this, of which many people, well, 35 people participated, and it was, I don't want to put anybody out of business. And they all knew who violated. So,
Was it the general feeling that those businesses who have not been in compliance would like to be? I haven't gotten that feeling.
Actually,
don't know.
the night that we
No,
actually had...
I don't think so, no.
Either way, okay.
The night that we had the public forum, I mean, it was very clear from, I think, the information that was gathered that night that that people wanted to work with the community. I think they actually, and some of the people who were there were very concerned about actually participating because they did live on Route 9, and the people that actually mentioned this were there, and I don't think they voiced their concerns over anybody else. I think it was just a majority of the people there wanted to make it work. So, I mean, to me, I would make the recommendation that if we were to change that, I would hate to take that totally out, because I think you did that not just for them, but for the planning board and for the codes to actually have an opportunity to be able to bring this all together. I mean, my recommendation would be if you wanted to put a close limit to it, to make it to a year. And a year goes by fast, especially through the process that we have to do.
What's the end of the fiscal year for the town?
June 30th.
It would actually it would start for 21 days from when this actually goes, from when we vote tonight.
So get almost 13 months then.
No, it would be 21 days from if we vote on it tonight, that year period would start. It wouldn't go by our
Right, but it would
financial-
be
So you wanna
almost
put a date.
13 months when you add the
Yeah.
21 days to a year.
Correct,
Right.
yeah. That 21 days is legally what we're bound to do.
That or just put it
Can I just make a comment?
expires 30th
Yep.
May or 30th of
Also,
June.
just consider one thing, is the financial requirement that may have to take place for these businesses. It may create difficulty for them if they have to come up with $2,000 or $3,000 or more, whatever it would take to bring them into compliance for, fencing or landscaping or things like that. It may take time. And it's a hardship on some of them possibly. I don't know. I don't know their finances, but just one thing to consider.
Well, there's a 2-year motion that we have that was brought up.
How's everybody feeling? I mean, are we generally in agreement that a year? I mean, I think.
I like to
felt
say 2
Roger
years,
would-
because Steve's right, it could be a financial burden on them.
My opinion of this is we actually had a planning board and a planner work really hard to put this forward, and there was a lot of thought process. And I don't think anybody through this thought process was thinking leniency. I think they were thinking practicalities. I think the idea of coming up with 5 years, they already seen that was kind of on the far side. The idea down to a year, they really didn't think it was reasonable. So, I have to actually consider the idea. These folks put some serious time in this and came up with their best recommendation, and for us to change it, I think we already are, but I don't think we ought to change it drastically because I think it kind of goes away from what the original intentions were. So, I mean, as it's, as it's presented right now, I think it's fair. I think we're going by, we are changing what their original opinion was, but I don't think we're changing it drastically, but I think we are showing that council is concerned that this gets resolved as soon as possible. So, if nothing else, I think the rest of the ordinance is actually written very well. And this 3-year, I know, was a concern, but, you know, we've actually shortened the time up by a third from what the original group to put this together originally thought was a fair time. So, if there's any other discussion, we can actually keep on this motion, or I'd be open to any other recommendations.
I'm good with 2.
It's, you,
I think 2 years is a fair amount of time. I mean, I think we have to be realistic about the fact that it's going to take time for the codes office to come up with a permit themselves. Planning board has to get through this, and they're not used to doing any of these permits at all, so they're going to be slow at it, and they only have one regular meeting a month, so I don't think we want to shut down businesses because of our government procedures, so be careful about that.
okay, so at this point in time, we'll continue with the roll call vote.
Okay. Amendment number 1 to change Part G on page 2 to 2 years. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
No.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
No.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
We have 5 yeas, 2 nays. Amendment passed. The main motion as amended. Roll call vote. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, what are we voting on?
The main motion, which is to adopt the ordinance
Okay,
with the change
alright.
with the 2 years on it.
Sure.
All right.
Yep.
A roll call vote. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
No.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
And Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
We have 6 yeas, 1 nay. Order passed.
Next item, please.
Order number 2013-26, GA Housing Maximums Appendix C. Second reading, roll call vote required.
Entertain a motion so we can actually move forward.
I'll make a motion to accept the GA housing maximum.
I'll second it.
Any discussion from council? Really have no control over it, so there's no lot we can say. Does this need to be a roll call vote? Continue?
Okay. Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Garrison? 7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next item, please.
Order 2013-27, Finance Committee Ordinance Amendment. Second reading, roll call vote required.
I'll make a motion to accept the Finance Committee ordinance amendment.
I'll second it.
Any discussion from council prior to voting? Go ahead.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next item, please.
Order 2013-28, Zoning Ordinance Amendment, first reading, roll call vote required.
These are just some cleanups of errors that were found in codification, and on a recommendation from our attorney, he felt we should just, to make it go through the process, start with the first reading and adopt it formally the way the correction should be.
Steve, do we have a handout on what those changes were?
Yeah, you do, in your
It
package.
was just mixed in. It's this one. It's those two.
Pretty much what it mostly consisted of areas that were changed in some section that weren't changed in others, and just basically these changes will bring all sections in compliance, I believe.
That's correct.
It was just written and changed in some areas and wasn't changed in others to comply.
I move that we accept these changes as they're made.
I'll second it.
And this is also a roll call vote.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Beckford?
Yes.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next item, please.
Is under other business, town manager's report.
Just some updates. The department heads have had all their budget requests in, and we started on Monday reviewing their departments one-on-one. We're making some changes. They are quite aware that if the governor's revenue sharing or any aspects of the Better Your Better program are changed, it will have a direct impact on us, and we will go back to the drawing board, and they're already working on alternatives if that does happen. We expect to be done by the end of this week, and then we'll be revisiting it through our department head meetings to come in line with what the council has requested, a flat increase, which is a tough nut at this point, but everybody's working towards that. The Finance Committee met last night, and they elected their officers, Mary Morgan Alexander. It was elected as chair, and Chris Regulus is vice chair. It's nice to see some different faces. Chris has got a strong background in finance for TD Bank, and I'm sure he'll be a great addition. Their first official meeting will be on this coming Monday, February 12th, and Marion and I and Fern will sit down and discuss what's upcoming on that. They have the audit, our past audit, as well as the budget we're currently in, and I guess they have some questions and want to just go through that so they're familiar with the current budget and bring everybody up to date and any questions they may have on the audit, or maybe some other things. They mentioned last night they had questions. We're not quite sure what they all are. So they will be meeting the second Monday of each month at 5:15. And so if anybody, it will be on the calendar, it will be up on our board. If anybody's interested in attending, they are open to the public, and they have a lot of work ahead of them. One thing that's coming up, and our new code enforcement officer is going through it, we have a change in our floodplain ordinance coming up. We're reviewing it just to compare what we have currently on the books with what the federal government says we need to have. I'm not sure what the differences are yet, but that will be coming before you. It should go to the planning board first for review, and we have to do this before the July. So that was something that's upcoming. I know Gina participated. This has been a long process, probably 2 or 3 years ago, 2 meetings throughout the county on floodplain changes, and it's finally come to completion. So hopefully, there's not a lot of changes we have to make. And also, I gave you a list of upcoming meetings. Again, remind the public and anybody else who's interested is that we have a public hearing coming up on this Thursday for the Route 196 Master Plan. So if those in the audience or counselors, it'd be great to have everybody there. And of course, the 11th, we have the Finance Committee meeting, and we'll be getting into the budget process, so we'll be meeting quite often.
That meeting on the 11th, is that
That's
council
the Finance
with
Committee
finance?
meeting.
Oh, it's
I had
just
said the
finance.
12th, it's actually the 11th for the Finance Committee. The 12th, we have a workshop with our chairs and vice chairs of all of our committees, so they can come and discuss what's going on with theirs and see if we have any recommendations for budgets and things like that. Also, at either 5:30 or 6, I sent you out a request if you all could meet on early that day at 5:30 or 6. It'd be nice if everybody could be here at 5:30 to talk to, I know, Dylan, you said you would not be able to attend, but to talk to our third attorney that we're interviewing. So let me know if you can't make it so I know who's there. Some of the staff will be talking with them at 4. So they'll be here from 4, and we'll meet right up until 7 o'clock if we need to before the start of our workshop. And that's what I have.
And that's it. Next item, please.
Is under appointments, Order 2013-29, a civil constable appointment, recommending Paul Popkin from Ace Detective and Security Agency.
Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any questions from council? And this is pretty much just yearly?
Yep,
We
we do,
actually-
this is one we do every year.
Yep.
Each
And
detective.
person hasn't changed, I take it, so
This may be a new one.
maybe a new one?
I think it's a new one.
It is a new one, okay,
Yep, and we do
Same
have the
agency.
insurance binders.
okay,
Yep.
perfect. If we're all set, now there's just needs to be a general vote. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item, please.
Counselor Communications.
Yeah, I got something.
Go ahead.
The last couple of weeks, that me and Steve have been attending meetings on converting the railroad bed from Lisbon to Lewiston into a multi-purpose trail. First one was at Avcog in Auburn, and it was very informative. The second one was in Lewiston at their town hall, and it kind of shocked me how fast they wanted to get things going. And then I'm kind of keep the thing slow, but they didn't want to do that. We had a meeting with a DOT representative, and I got fairly good vibe. It's not gonna be easy, but there is a way. So, and it's going on forward as fast as we can get it to go. So, that's all I got to say.
It's been talked about for a long time, right?
Yep, it has.
I got a couple things. This past Saturday, the council toured all the town-owned buildings and met with the department heads. So I want to say thank you to all the department heads and Steve for lining that up. They were very passionate and excited about what they do, so I was excited to see the sewer plant go in the tube thing. Gina escaped us, didn't go with us on that one, but it's okay. It was a good day, and it was a lot of fun to see what was happening and to talk with the department heads, so thank you for that. And then last night, I attended the school committee meeting. Mr. Green presented their budget. The finance committee was there, so it was very nice to see 4 new faces in the audience, taking notes, very active, so I think it'd be a great group, and thank you very much for that.
I did have the chance to stop in. There was a Recreation Committee meeting last night was scheduled. We didn't have it, but people showed up, so we talked with Mark about some of the upcoming, just briefly about some of the upcoming events. He's already planning for the Moxie 5K and the car show, and they were so successful last year, and he's looking forward to an even bigger turnout, the whole group is. And it just seems like they have a bottomless pit of energy to get things done and do projects there, and it's a pleasure to go to their meetings, even when there isn't one. So they do such a good job at those meetings. And again, Dylan brought up the tour of the town. It was fun, I'll admit it, it was fun. But it was also eye-opening in some ways. And no matter how much we talk to different department heads throughout the year, we get to see them in a different light or see them in their natural habitat, as it were. And that's eye-opening a little bit, too. So it was informative, and it was a good learning experience in addition to being fun. So I appreciate that we're able to do that every year. That's all I have.
I have several. I also went on the tour on Saturday, and I have been to the sewage treatment plant, but I got dripped on 2 years ago, so I did not go back. But anyways, we had a good time. It was good to see all the department heads, to be proud of their departments and working hard. We were able to tour the fire departments, which is always fun to me, and I paid particular attention to the ladder truck this time, and I have to tell you that I was able to watch that ladder truck in work on Sunday. My in-laws' house had a horrific chimney fire, and we went up, and Lisbon firefighters are awesome. They were doing a great job. My in-laws live in a 200-plus-year-old house. It's probably one of the oldest houses in town. And there was a horrible chimney fire. My father-in-law didn't even know it was happening. Androscoggin Sheriff stopped and told him it was happening. And Lisbon fire was in there within minutes. And they treated it just like it was their own home. They put plastic down on the floors to make sure no water got on the floors, and I was just really proud of them. And there are some pictures online on the Facebook page. You can see them fighting that fire. They did a great job, and I just want to thank them. I gave Sean a call and just very humbly said, "That's what we do. Thank you." And just, so it was nice to see them take care of older folks in town and do it the way they did. Very proud of them. Moxie is happening. It's been really coming along very quickly. We have about 5 months left before Moxie happens again. This has been kind of an unusual year. The gentleman who happened to name the Moxie contest this year is a Maine native, but he lives in Texas now. And there have been news reports all week, all over the country, picking up Moxie stories. We've had telephone calls from across the nation, people that want to come to the event for the parade, the vendors, the recipe contest, which is going to be run by a different person this year, some new fun ideas with that. So there were things on ABC News, there were things on in the Huffington Post, there were things newspapers across the nation about what's happening with Moxie this year, so I'm hoping that we get some new folks to come and join us. The gentleman who won the contest flew in last weekend. I was there, Roger was there, Scott, and a few others, and we were able to meet him, very proud to be from Lisbon, very proud to love Moxie. He's coming back for Moxie weekend. He's going to be one of our parade judges, so just a lot of fun things happening there. Also, the art contest is out to the schools. Our theme this year is Moxie, a Maine tradition. So the kids in the art department are working on that, and they'll be giving us some sort of art design. We'll have that ready by the end of March. And I've had several requests for the parade. It's from as far away as Minnesota. So should be a fun festival, and hopefully if any of you here or out there in TV land can give us a hand, we'd be glad to have you. Thanks.
Mark?
I'd like to congratulate Benoit's Bakery on their winning the Lisbon Business Award at the Androscoggin Chamber of Commerce. And I think that's a great honor for them, and I want to make sure they get recognition for that. If you haven't tried it, it's a great place. I was in there about a month ago, and they have some great donuts and nice selection of wines, so check it out.
Just wanted to add a couple things. As Dylan said, we're actually was able to sit back and listen to a little bit of the school budget last night, the first presentation. I know we're working on ours. Just want to encourage everybody out there that's listening that as the budget season moves forward, as Steve mentioned, it's going to be trying for everybody. I think everybody's going to have some things to look at this year when it comes to the budget. I'm just really encouraging any of the taxpayers in town to actually pay attention, be informed. As we did a while back, our councilors are here a half hour prior to our meetings, and we're open for recommendations or suggestions, or anybody has anything to add. And it's a good time to do it because it's kind of, it's very laid back. So if you do have any concerns, please come forward. But this year, as any year, it's really important for people, if you do have a concern about the budget process, to stay informed, because most of the departments are going to need some direction, and not just the town, but the school also. So it's always nice to have the input of people, and not just at a public hearing, but all the way through the whole process. I too had a note to mention about Moxie Days, because I was working in the shop the other day and I heard them talking about Moxie, and I was like, what do you mean they're talking about Moxie already? And it was a nice advertisement about the picking the theme and the person flying in. It was really kind of neat. So I mean, we're kind of far away from Moxie yet, but yet it's all
Only
rolling.
5 months.
It's only 5 months. So again, as we mentioned, the town has put some opportunities for people to come to evening meetings. And there's, some people that are ahead of some of the different organizations, whether it's for the, the downtown activities, or the 5K, the car show, or the parade. So if any of these have an interest to you, if you're not able to attend the meeting, just make a few phone calls. I'm sure people will hook you up to put you in the right place. This Thursday, I just want to emphasize what Stephen mentioned. We are having a public hearing here Thursday night for the master plan for the northern part of the town, which is basically the Lisbon line down to the Moody Road. And it's, I think it's going to be a good evening with lots of discussion, hopefully, and a lot of input. So if you have any concern about the northern part of town, what the gateway is going to look like, and what the zoning is going to be, and what we want our future to look like up there, please attend and give us your input so we can have the right information to move forward. Besides that, I'm all good. For everybody else, go ahead.
One thing, during our trip on Saturday, I mentioned at the library about the free Wi-Fi, and had asked about how they keep track. We discussed briefly about, a lot of places have those login pages. I really wasn't expecting any information back. Diane got back to me the next day before noon, letting me know exactly what it would take. and that it would be additional cost. I applaud her for that. I wasn't really looking for that kind of information, but what can you say? I mean, it's.
Got to be careful what you ask, Diane.
Yeah, exactly.
You weren't gonna get it all.
I
Yeah.
just made a suggestion that, a possibility, and she jumped right on it, so
Yeah.
outstanding, and I just want to say thanks.
Going through the budget process, you'll be able to see how tight of a ship that she actually.
She runs a tight
runs.
ship.
It is
One more
definitely-
thing, and I'll
Go
be
ahead.
quiet. The new Moxie website is up, moxiefestival.com. It's all new graphics, a lot of interactive stuff that you can find out where businesses and things are. And it's really great. We looked at it today. It's a lot of stuff, still some things to be corrected and changed, but it's pretty nice. Nice looking website.
A lot of good stuff, right?
Yes.
Anything else from council? Seeing none, next item, please.
Adjourned. Order 2013-30.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0. Thanks.
Thank you. Like that.
See you on Thursday.